Hey everybody. Boy, I gotta get this thing all fixed up here. It's been a while. Sorry for the long break between doing these broadcasts, and boy, it's been a tumultuous few months. That's for dang sure. Yeah, my hair's all messed up. You know, quarantine. You don't really care about things like this. My hair's all goofy, man. I didn't even realize how stringy it looks. Well, welcome back to Coffee with Steve. Thanks everybody for joining me today. I thought I would, of course, address probably the big elephant in the room, coronavirus. That's kind of the big one that's on everybody's minds right now. I think is, what are we supposed to do about this, and how are you handling it? What are you doing? I kind of go a little bit further. I kind of look at the government's reaction to this thing and, try to keep myself informed on what's going on with the virus itself and, how bad is it and, what are the chances and stuff like that. But I'm just going to give you kind of today my overall impression of what's going on with the coronavirus, how the government's kind of handling it and stuff like that. So hopefully you guys enjoy this, and let's do the intro. All right, it's been a while since I've done that intro. I'm surprised I still have it on my computer somewhere. Um, well, I should also actually, before I begin with that, let me kind of give you guys a little update on what's going on with me, because you may be wondering why the month long or the several month long absence. This does typically happen with me. I get like stuff going on, and I kind of have to drop the YouTube thing for a while. And this time I did get a new job about 7 months ago, 8 months ago. I got a new position with a company I don't want to disclose at this time. I'll tell you guys if you ask me in private. But I'm really, really excited. Like, there was nothing wrong. Those of you who know, I was working for WazU as not really a curriculum director, but kind of filling that role. It was really a very glorified subject matter expert. I was doing a lot of the curriculum authoring for them over there at WazU, and I was very happy with my time there. I loved working for those guys. Still do, left on really good terms, and I think what they're doing is absolutely wonderful. I did shift into a somewhat of a competitor, although not directly a competitor, but my job entails much more traveling and a lot more fun stuff for me, for me personally, and I think a little less stressful for me doing my job that I have now. So it's great. I love my new job. I get to kind of travel. I've been to Mexico. I've been to Boston. I've been to Oakland recently. I've been to all these different places, and lots more to come, I'm sure. Oh, my camera's getting a little fuzzy. Come on, camera. There we go. Sorry, I'm working with a slightly different camera. For some reason, it likes to fade in and out. It's a little weird. Okay, moving on. Let's get started on the topic today. So I think first of all, I'm not going to get into like news articles about this stuff, because it's very easy for you to go and research on your own. I'm sure you guys have been. Since you're stuck at home, you're probably all doing this already. You're probably already like trying to feed yourself with all the news that you can. And here I am, just some guy that has a tech blog, basically. What do they call these? Vlogs? I don't know that that's quite exactly the right term, but I think that we have maybe swung the pendulum a little too far. One of the concerns that I consistently have, and you guys know me, I don't consider myself a libertarian as part of the party, but I have a lot of libertarian leanings. I'm not really a Republican. I have this kind of different view. I wouldn't say independent. It's actually part of the Constitution Party, but the Constitution Party is really a mess right now. It probably always will be. I don't know. It's just that's where I typically vote. Man, my camera does not like to stay focused. Anyway, so my general opinion of government in general is that they tend to do things, they have certain basic functions that are necessary. And they're the worst or they're the best evil that we can assign ourselves to, right? We have certain functionalities that are just unfortunately best left to some sort of overarching government entity that we can just kind of say, you know what, you guys just go handle this. You go figure this out. I don't want our little local community to try to figure this out. It's just better if we just, kind of send you guys some money and you guys deal with it. There are certain things where that kind of makes sense. And, one of the big things that the libertarians make fun of is like my roads. And yeah, the road system is, the infrastructure in general is kind of one of those areas that government is necessary, but does a terrible job of managing it. And in my opinion, if they dropped all of the other things that they focus on and just stuck to the core elements of what a government should be maintaining and managing, then some of those arguments about my roads would definitely improve, right? The government, I think, would be better at handling road systems if that was all they were really doing. Policing, I do believe that there is a position for police. I think it's a necessity. To uphold laws. We are a nation of laws. Typically, those laws should reflect morality, but we don't necessarily always have laws that reflect morality. Quite often, they're unjust, if you will. Anyway, so that's kind of my general, almost, I wouldn't say dystopian view of government, but I really don't like government. The less of it that we have, the better. I kind of like this phrase: the larger the government, the smaller the citizen, right? The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. And so when you continue to give the government more control and more power over your lives, the less you have, right? The less control you have over your life. And I think we've reached kind of this, we were consistently for the last several decades been giving the government more and more and more control of our lives and just kind of handing them money. And they kept saying, well, the budget's overflowing. We got this huge debt. We need to tax more. And we're like, okay, yeah, the budget's a big problem. The debt's a big problem. We need to, tax the rich. I'm sure only the rich will be affected by us taxing them, which is a silly notion. Of course, if the rich are going to get taxed, that does affect us in the lower end of the scale. So, these kind of notions that we can just tax these people and everything will be fine as long as it's not me, right? As long as you don't tax me. And that's kind of the general problem that I have with the way that the taxation system in the government and, the way people view government. Yes, there are programs that are necessary, but, really underscore necessary. And that kind of leads us to where we are now, because we've given the government so much control that they can actually tell us, you have to stay at home. In some states, that's literally it. You have to stay at home. You cannot go out, unless you're wearing, I think there's some provisions if you're an essential employee and you have to have papers that state that from, I don't know how you get those statements. Do you get it from the local mayor or the city council, or who is it? Your boss that has to write up that note? I don't know, but somehow there's supposed to be papers that allow you to do this in some states. Now, one of the things is I'm not a huge Trump supporter, but I do think that advise is kind of the position that the federal government should take. Advise the local state and city governments and county governments as to what's going on as far as with the virus, and let the smaller communities decide for themselves how they should handle it, because some parts of the U.S. are not affected as dramatically as others. Like New York City, of course, is much more deeply impacted, but that's because they're going to have a denser population of people. And yes, the numbers are larger for New York City. Well, that's because they have a denser, higher population. Of course, there are going to be more fatalities from this thing. There's just a little bit of, I wouldn't say misinformation, but it's information that's being skewed to give you an overall view of this virus as being something really incredibly harmful. If you contract it, you're going to die. That's kind of the thing, is that's kind of the overall feeling when it's in reality less than 1%, right? And yes, It's more than the flu, right? And we know that the death rate, the mortality rate is higher than the flu, but it is still less than 1% by pretty much almost every standard that we've got now. When you start looking at, I think actually the latest one that I saw was 1.3%, but they think that that's the official number, but they think it's going to be less than that because of the number of people who probably have it that did not, that are not being reported. So they believe it's less than 1%. I'm pretty confident that it's going to be less than 1%, at least in America. Now, that's not necessarily for everywhere. And there's a lot of reasons why the numbers are being kind of skewed. And I read an article by a pathologist about how they're trying to figure out exactly whether or not this should be considered a coronavirus death, or whether or not, where like even the CDC is saying, yeah, if you suspect it's coronavirus, then it's coronavirus. Like it's so weird how all these different systems are kind of saying that a coronavirus death is a coronavirus death. And I think it is kind of up to the local hospital. It's up to the local pathologist that is trying to determine this. Now, my overall opinion about that death rate issue is that where is the money, right? Like if we can consistently ask, what about the money? And that will often lead you to certain inevitable conclusions. And especially when you're dealing, don't get me wrong here. I love the hospital staff. I love doctors and nurses and the support staff. I mean, just even the poor janitors that have to take care of that stuff, the orderlies. It's amazing that they don't get nearly enough credit for what they have to go through. Can you imagine what an orderly has to do on a daily basis? Like, amazing stuff that these people are doing. My heart goes out to every one of them that is taking care of people in this time. But that being said, there's also this upper management, right? There's this management staff that hospitals have consistently been known to be trying to we need more money. We got to do everything we can to kind of gain the system and bring more money to our hospital. That's been a pretty consistent thing that I don't think a lot of people really talk enough about, is because we have this sympathy towards the doctors and the nurses, and we all care about the hospitals, and we want them to thrive, we want them to be good, but there's kind of this upper management in a lot of cases, not all of them. Please understand, I'm doing some generalizations here. But there definitely is an incentive by the upper management in hospitals to say, anything and everything that is coronavirus related, we want you to mark as a coronavirus death. Because there's financial incentive. They get reimbursed by the federal government or the state government for each one of those deaths that cannot be recovered, or loss of finances due to coronavirus death. And of course, to get geared up for the coronavirus death, right? The coronavirus, what they think is going to be coming in, right? All the supplies that we need to get, all the scrubs that we need to buy, all the hospital beds, the ventilators, we need to expand our West Wing much larger. We need to do some construction. We need, all of a sudden, there's this chance for these higher ups in the hospital to say, hey, we got an opportunity to say, yeah, we suspect we're going to get 10,000 infected. That's what we're projecting, is 10,000 people. So give us money. That's what we think, that we're going to have 10,000. So give us money. There's incentive there, right? Like, how could you not see that there's an incentive for the hospitals to be kind of gaining the system here? Now, once again, that doesn't mean every single one of them is doing this. This doesn't mean every single one of them is corrupt and etc. But I mean, the hospital, the healthcare system, stop going out of focus. Come on, focus on me. Focus. Oh my goodness. I need a better camera. What is going on here? Focus. Can I, if I hold something else up? There it goes. Jeez. Focus on me, camera. It's an expensive 4K camera that can't even stay focused. Just like me, I can't stay focused. Anyway, the fact that hospitals can gain from this financially is not an insignificant factor in what's going on. You have the news media. They have every incentive to keep you in fear because that's their currency. That's how they get advertising, is to keep you suspended, to keep you locked into the news. And my gosh, if there's ever anything in this world besides a war that could keep you locked into your TV, it's having everybody sequestered in their homes with nothing to do except watch TV and watch the internet and watch for news, and then just kind of keep handing you all this information about how likely it is you're going to die and how many people have died and how many people are getting it, how easy it is to transmit. You better stay in your homes. Like, there's financial incentive there. There's financial incentive for all of this. People are trying to make money. And don't get me wrong, I'm all about people making money. I'm all about people making money, but I'm also really about keeping people informed. And if there is outright lying or outright misinformation being disseminated, I don't want to shut those entities down, but I do think that there is a need to counterbalance that with correct information, truth, right? You speak truth to power, right? That's the kind of thing. News, in my opinion now, is the power. It's kind of weird how over the centuries or the decades this has really changed. How, in my opinion, like, news media is part of that power. It's kind of this leftist political base that is trying to gain traction in the American culture, and they kind of view themselves as not a part of it, but they really are. Anyway, so media they've got financial incentive. Hospitals have financial incentive. Politicians have financial incentive. Like, there's just a lot of reason to keep you in your home doing nothing. Now, that doesn't mean that social distancing, my wife hates that term, it doesn't mean social distancing is the wrong idea. I think that it's probably very accurate. It's how would we deal with the flu, right? What if you were worried that you might die if you contract the flu? How would you behave? Well, you'd start putting on, these masks. You would use hand sanitizer. You would stay home most of the time, but you still would go and do things that would be a part of normal commerce, right? You would go out to the local shopping stores and go buy your food, just like we all kind of are doing right now. So to me, it seems kind of foolish that we have sequestered ourselves in our homes because the government tells us to, which is kind of, boy, there's so many different directions to go with that. But governments telling you how to live your life is it's the Garden of Eden for governments, right? They want to be able to tell you, and based on fear, right? They're telling you how to behave, how to live your life, what kind of enterprises can continue to be allowed to operate, right? This is like government, the most government thing a government could possibly do. This is about as socialist a state as you could possibly imagine. And people who didn't think that our government was socialist, I think, hello, this is as socialist as we can possibly get, aside from perhaps the fact that, maybe it's more communist to say that the fact that I even have a voice that I can broadcast on YouTube and I have the freedom of speech to state my opinions. Come on, camera. There we go. Focus. The fact that I have the ability to state my opinion is great, right? That's still part of the American culture. But man, we're locked down. We're all in fear. We're not allowed to go out, and this goes all the way into businesses that have to be shut down and shuttered. Right? They have to. You're not allowed to go to furniture stores. Like my wife and I, we got a new apartment. It's actually a townhouse, and we can't go get the furniture that we want. We have to order from online and hope that it gets delivered whenever it gets delivered. I don't know how that they're not going to be able to come in. They're going to just drop it off on the curb. I don't know how that's going to work, but yeah, it's not the best. It's not the greatest. So the government is allowed to say who is able to be open and working right now. And by the way, I saw in California, surprise, surprise, California, that if you are a non-essential business and you continue to try to operate, they will cut off your power. They will cut off the essentials to keep your business going. So if you don't abide, they're going to shut you down. They're going to force you to shut down, which is about as draconian as it gets, right? We've seen article after article of people getting arrested because they're not maintaining proper social distancing. I don't know. It's not even that. It's like some guy that was playing baseball with his daughter gets arrested in front of her in the middle of a baseball field, and like nobody's around. There's a guy that was infamously, he was like surfing or something out in California and he got arrested. There's people that just recently, they were church going, right? But it was a drive-in. They were all staying in their cars to go to church, and they were all fined $500 because they were doing what? What exactly was wrong with that? It's almost as if the government believes that they know better than you. That's kind of the problem. We have this group in society that believes they know better than you do. They know better than everybody else, and they're the ones that should dictate to you how to live your life and how the government should operate and whose businesses should be open and what type of commerce can we do, right? Like that's the elements that are at play here that I see. And I know I'm all over the place on this because there's just so much mixed into this, but I think if there's a silver lining to any of this, I think it's that more people are starting to open their eyes to this happening. There's homeschooling that's being forced right now. All of a sudden, all these parents that are like, wait a minute, homeschooling is kind of good because my kids actually enjoy it. I get to spend more time with my kids, and the kids are happier. I get to teach them what I think they should be taught. And why am I paying the government to do all this? Right? Like, why is the government involved in this? The government standards suck. Like, that's kind of one of the silver linings that's involved there. And I think another silver lining is a lot of people that are like, why am I stuck at home? Why can I go to Walmart, but I can't go to Ashley's furniture store? If they can figure it out at Walmart, how to keep people safe, why can't I go to a clothing store? Why can't I go do my normal, like somebody was saying, why can't we open the movie theaters? Like, movie theaters seem like the best example of where people are unnecessarily crammed together in a small space. But even theaters could figure this out. You only put people one to every third seat or something like that, right? You only sell 1/3 of the tickets, but you keep it going. You keep the business going. You have more showings, right? You can do stuff like that. The businesses can figure out how to do it if you let them. And if the people don't like to go or don't like the way that a particular place is doing it, maybe they can ask right up front, like, how are you guys maintaining your social distancing? What kind of things are you doing? Before I go and patronize this place, tell me what you guys are doing to prevent it. And then all those emails that we got about how they're preventing it would make sense. But basically, the bottom line is, like, why are we allowing the government to tell us how to conduct our lives? And it's only out of fear. It's only because of this fear of this unknown virus that, as of yet, I am still not 100% sure actually came from some sort of bat in a wet market. Okay, even if it did, okay. But there's some shady stuff that was going on with that. I don't know if you guys saw that Harvard professor and the two guys from the Chinese army that were actually from the Wuhan province. Like, there's some weird stuff going on there. I'm not totally sure. I don't know that I buy anything that China tells us about this, let alone its origin. I don't know. I don't want to get into conspiracy theory. I'm not all about conspiracy theories, but I am about, like, just what is prudent. What should we be doing? And I think that we've gone too far. I think that we need to open up our economy as soon as possible. We're talking about an extra $6 trillion worth of debt being piled onto our already like $24 trillion debt. It's almost at 24 trillion. It's like 23.8 or something like that. So we have almost a $24 trillion debt. We're going to throw another $6 trillion on top of that through this thing. We're going to be up to $40 trillion. At what point do we just say, wait a minute, this is too much? How is the government going to spend well, first of all, where does this money come from? Where does this money come from? It comes from the Treasury, the central banking system. Like, where does the money that the government gets actually come from? And the bottom line is it comes from the banks. Okay? Banks are the ones that are essentially footing the bill that the government spends, because that's where do you think the money comes from that the government actually spends on us? That $1,200 check, where does that come from? Well, ultimately, that comes from our taxpayer money, sure, but it comes through some sort of central banking system when it goes over what's being brought in through taxes. So you have banks that are going to be fully stressed out. And then you have the same banks that are supposed to be giving out these loans to small businesses. And of course, they're hemming and hawing because they have certain interests that they have of which companies they want to see succeed. I can't say that it's any better system. I don't know the best way to do this. I don't know the best way to disseminate it. It seems like if you were going to infuse cash into the system and try to keep the economy afloat, it seems like the best way to do that is to just give the people the money, right? Just give them the money that they need in order to stay afloat. And I don't even think that you need to do it as a business type of thing, right? You don't need to say that a business needs to apply for a loan and yada, yada, yada. I think you can just simply go off of the tax returns, right? You can go off of if a business had so many employees, that business gets reimbursed X amount of dollars. If you are a particular person, you can, the $1,200 is just that's a drop in the bucket. And I think I saw that if they took all the money that was being spent on this stimulus package and just gave it to people, just gave it to the 350 million people that live in the U.S., that would equate to about $17,000. You can't give people just the $17,000. You got to come up with this ridiculous government program with a huge amount of overhead. That's what's gonna have to happen. So there's some shady stuff that's going on there too. Anyway, my advice, I'm going to end it up on this. My advice to you is, yes, stay safe. Wear your masks. Stay at home when it's necessary. But also don't be afraid to go out, right? Don't be afraid to go out. Go, walk in a park or something. Just, stay away from people. If you are, one of the healthy individuals, if you are, at risk, if you're 50 or older, then maybe you need to kind of quarantine yourself a bit more. And, try to, have only a couple of people in your life to stay in contact with that might bring you food or try to help you out with emergency things. If you are at risk, then by all means, take every measure you see fit, not what the government sees fit, but what you see fit for yourself. And listen to the government guidelines, right? Listen to the CDC guidelines. Listen to, God forbid, don't listen to the WHO. They're just, there's some shady stuff going on there with the WHO, right? We got Bill Gates and we got China and all sorts of weird stuff with the WHO. But listen to what the doctors say as far as how to protect yourself. But don't let the government tell you exactly what to do. You decide for yourself what measures you need to take. Okay? That's the bottom line. You are responsible for yourself. The government is not responsible for you. Even though that's kind of the way that the left wishes it was, is that the government was responsible for everything. No, you need to stay responsible for yourself. And listen to the guidelines, listen to the doctors, listen to the professionals, and ask them, right, hear what they have to say about how to protect yourself. And do those things. If you are one of the more healthy people, then do what you see fit as well. If you are also worried about getting, I know that there have been some younger people that have died from this, and it's kind of unknown why. There's no underlying health conditions with some young people, and they've died from it. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That has happened. But that doesn't mean that we do this draconian lockdown of everybody. The percentages are much lower than what people think right now. It's not. For crying out loud, over 98% of the people who get this, nothing really happens, or they might get severe. 5% I think have some sort of serious response. So that's 95% of people who get this either don't even know that they have it, or the symptoms are so small that they don't even require any hospitalization, right? It's just like a cough, a fever, and then they're done. So it's like the flu. It's like a cold. It's, well, more like the flu. But those are the symptoms that we typically have from this thing, and that's for the vast majority. And if we aren't doing that, we don't create herd immunity, right? We don't insulate the people who haven't gotten it, right? You need to have enough people that have gotten it, contracted it, got over it with their own immune systems, and then they insulate those people who have not gotten it. So you need that herd immunity to happen in order to kind of shut down the virus. Because if you do this prolonged thing where you consistently let the virus continue to propagate slowly, then that means it's going to continue to exist. And then once we open the doors again to commerce, it's going to suddenly balloon out of control again. And then they're going to have to shut everything down again because, obviously the isolation didn't work. And that's the problem is, as long as we continue to let this thing slowly roll across the world, it's going to continue to exist. And then once we open the doors, it's going to spike again. So, yeah. Anyway, like I said, my final piece of advice, do for yourself what you believe you need to do. Listen to what the advice is, but that doesn't mean that the governments are right. Okay. This whole locking down of businesses, go find your local mom and pop shops, try to see if you can support them. Give them, we use like Instacart for getting our food so that we have less contact. Excuse me. No, I don't have it. I don't think, anyway. I haven't been tested, but I don't think I have it. I think it's just because my voice is dry from talking. I haven't done this in a long time. Anyway, I better let it go at that because Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to try to do this again more often. I have a little bit more free time on my hands now, so maybe I can do it a bit more. So thank you, everybody, for dropping by, and have a great, wonderful rest of your week.